It slipped from my fingers as I reached for the creamer, hit the tile, rolled under the cabinet. I crouched to grab it, just a bottle of allergy meds, or so I thought. I turned it over, brushing off dust, and froze. The label stared back like it was waiting. That wasn't an antihistamine, not even close. It was something I'd only heard of once years ago when a friend's sister had been put on it after an emotional incident. Stabilizers, the doctor had called them. Not addictive, but not exactly casual either. Prescribed after breakdowns. Or worse. She was at the sink, humming, wiping a glass dry with the dish towel. "Drop something?" she asked. I held the bottle up. "Yeah, your allergy meds." She turned, took it back without looking. "Thanks." Slid it into the cupboard behind the cereal boxes. Not the medicine cabinet, not the drawer, behind the Cheerios. If you're still watching, if this already feels too familiar, do me a favor. Tap subscribe. Like the video. 97% of people never do, but it helps more than you know. And this story, it only gets darker from here. That night, I kept my eyes open longer than I needed to. She curled up beside me like always, her foot searching for mine under the covers. I didn't move. My foot stayed where it was. Her breathing deepened, slow and peaceful. Mine didn't. I stared at the ceiling fan turning in slow loops. Thought about all the mornings I'd watched her take that pill. Thought about how she never once said the name of it. How I never once asked. We had a rhythm. Work, dinner, errands, silence. Weekends at the market, Sundays folding laundry while she caught up on emails. No drama, no chaos. I thought that was a win. I thought that meant we were solid. But now I was watching the pattern too closely, playing it back in my head like a looped film. Every time she took that pill, what came after? Were there days she needed it more? Mornings she took two? Were there signs I'd missed or signs she'd hidden? I rolled onto my side, watched her sleep. Her mouth slightly parted, her hand curled under her chin. The same woman who cried when we watched home renovation shows, who organized our spice rack alphabetically, who kept emergency cash hidden in her sock drawer. What else was tucked away? The next morning, I waited for her to take it. Same time, same place. She placed it next to her mug like it was a ritual. She didn't look at me when she swallowed it. "Allergies," she muttered again. I nodded. Then I kissed her on the forehead like always. But in my head, I was flipping through every moment we'd had this year, like I was trying to solve a puzzle that had been quietly missing a corner piece since the start. She left for work. I stood in the kitchen and opened the cupboard, moved the cereal boxes aside. The bottle was gone. Just like that, I told the receptionist it was just a wellness check. Blood pressure, cholesterol, the usual. She smiled and handed me the clipboard like she always did, like I wasn't carrying 100 silent questions in my bag instead of a wallet. Dr. Halverson walked in like nothing was off. "How's the breathing?" he asked, skimming my chart. "Still running in the mornings?" I nodded. "When I can." He tapped his pen against the screen. "Sleep okay?" I hesitated, then gave the kind of answer people give when they don't want to sound dramatic. "Mostly." We went through the motions. Heartbeat, reflexes, light in my eyes. I let him do it all. I waited until he pushed the stool back and stood up to print something from the corner. Then I said it like it had just popped into my head. "Oh, quick question. The medication she's on now, is that new?" The way he turned wasn't sharp, but it wasn't smooth either. There was a flicker, barely a beat, but I caught it. "I'm sorry," he said, a little too carefully. "Without her consent, I can't share anything medical." I shrugged. "Of course. Just seemed different, that's all." He didn't nod, didn't move, just stood there for half a second longer than he had to. Then he handed me the printout. "But if you're asking," he said quietly, "you probably already know." I folded the paper and slipped it into my bag. Said thank you like it was a regular day. The walk back to my car felt longer than usual, wind picking up, biting through my sleeves. I sat in the driver's seat with my hands still on the wheel, not starting the engine. He didn't deny anything. He didn't confirm it either, but I heard what he meant. That was the part that stuck. It wasn't about allergies. It wasn't about spring blooms or dust mites. It was about something heavier and worse, something known, documented, treated, but not shared, not with me. We'd been through flu seasons, ankle sprains, her uncle's heart attack. We had a shared calendar, for God's sake. But somehow, this, whatever this was, got locked behind a door I didn't even know existed. I stared out the windshield at the grocery store across the street. People were coming out with flowers and rotisserie chickens, kids in tow, headphones on, everyone wrapped in their own little lives. I used to think ours was unshakable, not flashy, but strong. Now I wasn't so sure. Was she protecting me, or just protecting the version of herself she thought I could handle? I thought about the bottle being gone, about how she must have moved it the moment I walked out of the kitchen. She knew I'd seen it, and she said nothing. I didn't text her, didn't bring it up that night or the night after. Instead, I made soup, folded laundry, let the silence stretch thin between us, like a rope pulled too tight. Every time she looked down at her plate, I watched her face for flickers. Was that guilt? Relief? Was she waiting for me to say something or praying I wouldn't? One morning, I stood behind her while she brewed coffee. She didn't reach for the pill, just sipped quietly, eyes fixed on the steam, like nothing had changed, but everything had. She left for yoga, same routine as always, black leggings, loose sweatshirt, keys dangling from her fingers. She kissed my cheek like nothing had shifted, like I hadn't been lying awake for 2 weeks tracing the edge of a silence neither of us dared name. As soon as her taillights disappeared, I walked straight to her study, the place she said was too messy for me to bother with. Mostly receipts, notebooks, old planners, nothing worth the trouble. But the bottom drawer stuck halfway open. I pulled gently, then harder, until it slid loose. Inside, folders, blue, green, manila, neatly stacked, alphabetized, taxes, vet visits, vacation itineraries, and one red file unlabeled, red. It didn't belong. I took it out and laid it flat on the desk. My fingers hesitated before opening it. Inside were printouts. First page, a prescription summary, the name of the drug, same one I'd seen on the bottle, dose, frequency, refill dates. Second page, appointment logs, 6 sessions with a private psychiatrist I'd never heard of. Sessions marked post-incident assessment, that word again, incident. Third page, insurance claim, diagnosis code printed in bold. I didn't know the number, but under it, prescribed as part of emotional regulation protocol following acute behavioral episode. I sat down. Acute behavioral episode. I flipped through the rest. Notes about follow-ups, refill requests, a printed email from her therapist thanking her for taking this next step seriously. Nowhere was my name. No mention of a spouse, no emergency contact, no acknowledgement that there was another person in the house, sharing her bed, making her tea, filling her tank when she forgot. I kept reading, my stomach tightening with every page. Finally, near the back, a progress summary. She expressed concern about disclosing past events to her partner, worries it might change how he sees me. Patient agreed to focus on stabilization before re-engaging with relational transparency. Relational transparency. I read that line 10 times. She had made a decision to stabilize first, explain later. But later never came. Instead, she swallowed pills across the counter from me for 6 months and smiled like we were fine. I stood, closed the folder, slipped it back exactly where I found it. Not because I wanted to protect her, but because I wasn't ready to show my hand. Hurt doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shifts something small inside you. A lever, a wire, a bolt that used to hold everything in place. That morning, I made the bed without asking if she wanted it done, took the trash out without being reminded, topped off her wiper fluid on the car. She came back glowing. Said class was great, hugged me from behind while I chopped vegetables. Her voice was easy, light. I didn't flinch. I didn't say a word. But I looked down at the carrots, watched the blades slice through. Clean, repetitive, final. And all I could think was, there was an incident. But not the one she was thinking of. The real one was about to begin. I didn't confront her. That was the first real choice I made. I didn't bring up the file. Didn't ask what the incident was. Didn't ask why I wasn't trusted with it. Every question stayed exactly where it formed, behind my teeth, pressed flat by something colder than anger. She didn't tell me either. So the space between us didn't explode. It stretched. I started staying later at work. Not dramatically, just late enough to miss dinner together. I sent texts like running behind or don't wait up. True statements. Technically, I was running behind the version of myself that used to come home early. I canceled plans with friends. Blamed deadlines. Let invitations die quietly in group chats. It was easier to be tired than present. At home, I smiled when required, nodded at the right places, answered questions with fewer words than necessary. How was your day? Fine. What do you want for dinner? Whatever. She noticed. Of course she did. She always noticed shifts in weather, in tone and lighting, but she interpreted it in a way that let her sleep at night. Work's been brutal, huh? She said one evening, handing me a glass of wine. I took it. Yeah. She squeezed my shoulder, relieved. A simple explanation neatly applied, no further questions required. At night, the ritual continued. She'd reach for the bottle, sometimes from the kitchen, sometimes from the nightstand when she thought I wasn't paying attention. A small white pill in her palm. A sip of water. Done. I lay on my back, eyes open, counting the rotations of the ceiling fan, wondering which parts of our life were real and which parts had been quietly redacted. I started noticing edits everywhere. Stories she told differently now. Events she summarized instead of describing. Days that blurred together with no detail. Entire weeks reduced to nothing much. Maybe it was the medication. Maybe it was the secret. Maybe it was the practice of hiding that had changed the way she moved through the world. And maybe it had changed me too. I stopped reaching for her in my sleep, not consciously. My hand just stayed where it was. She shifted closer anyway, her body still remembering a closeness mine was slowly unlearning. Some nights, she'd sigh softly and whisper, "You okay?" I always said yes, not because it was true, but because saying no would have opened a door I wasn't ready to walk through. I watched her more than I spoke, watched how she laughed a second later than she used to, how her reactions felt smoother, flatter, regulated. I wondered what version of her I was living with now, and what version had made the decision to keep me out. The wall didn't go up all at once. It formed brick by brick, moment by moment. Missed dinners, short answers, quiet nights. From the outside, we probably looked fine. From the inside, I felt myself stepping backward, slowly, deliberately, like someone learning the shape of an exit in the dark. And every night, as she slept beside me, steady and calm, I stared into the ceiling and asked the same silent question. How much of this life was still ours, and how much of it had already been rewritten without my consent? We met at a small place on 7th, one of those cafes with chipped plates and strong coffee. Marty slid into the booth across from me, loosened his tie, and gave me the look old friends give when they know you're not here to talk about sports. I kept it simple. Say a guy wanted to untangle things, quietly, no drama, no obvious moves. What would he start with? He didn't blink, just sipped his coffee and said, "Depends. Is the guy married?" "Yeah." "Joint assets?" "Some." Then he'd start by learning which assets bite when they shift, and which ones vanish clean. We talked for 40 minutes. About trusts, clauses, contingencies, the things people never want to think about until it's too late. He never asked what happened. That's why I called him. That night, I opened my laptop and started sorting. First, my will. Updated the old version from 5 years ago. Removed language about all shared property and added line items. Clean, neutral, no spite. Second, I opened a new account at a small credit union 2 towns over. No shared access. No digital footprint she'd notice unless she went looking, which she wouldn't. Third, I paid off the house. Quietly. 1 transfer. Done. I didn't tell her. No celebration. Just a soft chime on my banking app and a letter in the mail 2 days later confirming 0 balance. She held up the letter at breakfast. "What's this?" "Paid it off." She blinked. "You didn't say anything." I shrugged. "Felt like the right time." She smiled. "Wow, that's huge." I nodded and passed her the butter. That was the end of the conversation. Last, the title. That was the only move that gave me pause. It wasn't about leaving. Not yet. It was about making sure when I did, if I did, there were no locks I'd forgotten to check, no hinges I'd neglected to oil. Clean exits are built in advance. That's what Marty said. So I signed the paperwork, filed it through a title attorney we didn't share. My name came off the deed. I didn't even keep a copy in the house. Just a notarized version filed and a scan saved under a neutral name on a flash drive that never left my backpack. She didn't know. She didn't suspect. But I slept better that week. Not because I was planning something cruel, because I was planning something clean. There's a difference between revenge and release. I wasn't angry anymore, not the way I was in the beginning. I didn't want to blow anything up. I didn't want to punish her. I just wanted a door, a real one. Not symbolic, not emotional, a legal, documented, notarized door. And now I had it. She kissed me on the forehead that night and said, "You've been quiet lately." I smiled, just thinking. She kissed me again. "Try not to overthink. You always go too deep." She had no idea how deep I'd already gone. And that was the point. The night before, she was humming again, folding towels, lighting a candle, asking if I wanted tea. I told her no thanks, sat on the couch, eyes on a blank TV screen, hearing the rhythm of a life I was already stepping out of. I didn't sleep much, just waited for the clock to hit 4:30. No suitcase, no duffel, just a messenger bag, the one she bought me years ago for my birthday. I packed it quietly, ID, laptop, a box of old photos I'd kept tucked behind the books, and the red file. The one she never thought I'd touch again. I didn't take clothes, didn't empty drawers, didn't erase my presence. That wasn't the point. I just needed enough to start breathing somewhere else. By 5:10, I was backing out of the driveway, the porch light still on, soft glow behind drawn curtains. Her car sat where it always did. 2 mugs still drying by the sink, one for her and one, symbolically, pointlessly, for me. I hit the interstate before the sun crested the edge of the horizon. My phone stayed silent for a while. I'd left it turned on, not to provoke, just to let things unfold the way they naturally would. At 7:32, the first call came. Her name lit up the screen. I let it ring. It stopped, then again, and again. I turned the phone face down on the passenger seat, let the road take me, mile by mile, county line by county line. I didn't play music, I didn't speak, I just drove. Around noon, she texted, "Where are you?" followed by, "Is this a joke?" and then, "Please just call me." Then silence. I didn't block her. I didn't answer either. I left the thread open, each new message stacking like layers of disbelief. By the time I crossed into New Mexico, I had 21 missed calls, then 23, then 28, most from her, one from her sister, one from our neighbor. I pulled into a gas station, topped off the tank, stood outside drinking bad coffee under the midday sun. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody needed to. That was the whole point. Clean exit, legal footing, everything I needed in my bag, nothing left behind that would give her cause to chase legally, just questions. That's the thing about leaving without a fight. It's harder to turn into a villain when you don't burn anything down, when you just walk out calm and intact. You don't give them a scene to point at. No explosion, no scar to display. She'd have to sit with the silence, with the space where I used to be, with the realization that I hadn't stormed out in anger. I'd disappeared in clarity. Around sunset, I checked into a small place off the highway. Cash payment, no ID scanned, the kind of place where nobody asks questions. I showered, ate a sandwich from the vending machine, sat on the edge of the bed, flipping through the file one more time, not because I needed to reread it, just to remind myself it was real, that I hadn't imagined the part where she chose concealment over partnership, where she chose quiet pills and secret appointments instead of trust. She had her coping mechanism, I had mine. Mine had 4 wheels, tinted windows, and a full tank of gas. And by the time she realized I was really gone, I was already 3 states ahead. The calls came in waves. At first, angry, sharp, staccato voicemails, her voice tight and clipped. "You're being dramatic. You couldn't just talk to me like an adult? Grow up." Then they turned frantic. "Please, just tell me what's going on. Are you okay?" "I'm scared." By day 3, she stopped leaving voicemails. Just let the ringtone run its course. Sent texts instead. "Is this a breakdown? Did I do something I don't see? Was it the medication?" That one sat there unread for hours before I opened it. She was circling the truth now, getting close to it without naming it, like a burglar pacing outside a door they can't pick. I didn't respond, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because there was nothing left to explain. The explaining had been her job months ago, when the truth was fresh and unedited. I'd only taken the shape she left for me. Her sister texted on the 5th day. "She's not sleeping. She keeps asking if you're safe, says you blindsided her, says this isn't like you." I stared at that one for a while. "She says you blindsided her." I thumbed out a reply, just 4 words. "She blindsided me first." Then I deleted them, not because they weren't true, But because I didn't need her sister as a messenger, I didn't need anything passed back. I didn't want a reconciliation brokered through middlemen. I wanted distance, stillness, air. For years, I'd lived next to a woman who curated her emotions like a museum, displayed the acceptable ones, locked away the rest. I'd accepted the exhibit as truth. Now I was done. I got a new number, quiet, just for banking and work. Gave it to 3 people. I kept the old phone on silent in the drawer of a nightstand in a rented apartment 3 hours from where I crossed the state line. Every now and then I'd check it. Messages still came in. Did you leave me? Are you with someone? Do you hate me? The one that caught me off guard was this. I thought I was protecting you. I read that one 3 times. Then I closed the screen, powered the phone off, and slid it back into the drawer. Because protection without trust isn't love. It's strategy. And I'd learned enough about strategy by then to know that if you're not in the room when the rules get written, they're not for your benefit. She'd written rules, I'd written my exit, and now, no matter how loud the confusion got on her end, I didn't have to play interpreter anymore. I just had to keep walking. The mountains were still holding on to their snow caps that morning. Late spring light slid in through the tall windows of the coffee shop, sharp and clean. I was halfway through a journal article, sipping something too bitter but hot enough to keep my hands warm. Boulder had been good to me. Quiet. Anonymity tucked into sunlight and altitude. New routines, new apartment. No one knew the past I carried in the back of my lungs like cold air. They called my name, well, the name I'd been using now. For my order, not a lie. Just a shift. One letter different, one life removed. I walked to the counter. That's when I saw her. She hadn't changed much. Hair slightly longer, a coat that looked expensive but unseasonable. She froze mid-step like her body registered me before her brain caught up. I didn't flinch. She stepped forward slowly, mouth parting as if she'd say something light, familiar. I stood straight, let her come closer. When she was a few feet away, I looked directly at her. Hello, Olivia. It landed harder than I expected. Her breath caught. Shoulders pulled back. Not Liv, not babe, not even a raised brow or smirk. Just the name on her driver's license, cold and precise. She tried to recover. You look different. I nodded once. That's the idea. Her eyes flicked down at the cup in my hand, the name scrawled on the side. I saw the moment she recognized it didn't match what she used to call me, that even that small piece of me had shifted beyond her reach. She blinked fast. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. You almost didn't. We stood there, surrounded by strangers chatting about ski passes and startup deadlines. She looked like she wanted to say more but didn't know how to start. I tilted my head toward the sidewalk. Outside? She nodded, wordless, following me like someone unsure if they were walking into a confrontation or a confession. I pushed open the door, held it just long enough for courtesy, not invitation. The air was crisp, the sun sharp enough to make her squint. She rubbed her hands together like she was cold, even though it was 65 degrees. I looked for you, she said. I know. I didn't expect you to disappear like that. I raised an eyebrow. No? She flinched at my tone. She wasn't used to this version of me. Steady, distant, finished. There was a time she could have read me in half a second. That time was over. She stood with her arms crossed, trying to wrap herself in dignity. You look healthy. I am. We both stood in it, this strange echo of a marriage that once ran on soft gestures and daily nods. All of that burned down now, but the smoke still hung in the air between us. She looked down, then back up. Do you hate me? I didn't answer. Instead, I sipped my coffee, eyes on hers, and said nothing at all. That silence said enough. The sidewalk was quiet except for the slow hiss of a nearby bus breaking down the block. She stood beside the bench, shifting her weight from one foot to the other like she was still deciding whether to sit or run. I waited, let her fill the silence. It was never about hiding from you, she started. It was about not knowing how to explain it, not knowing if it would scare you off. Her voice cracked near the end of the sentence. I kept my expression still. She looked down at her shoes. I started the meds after that week I stayed at my sister's and said it was for her surgery. I didn't respond. She went on. I had an episode, a real one. I scared myself and I didn't know what to do. The doctor gave me the option to stabilize and I thought if I could just manage it first, quietly, then I'd tell you when I could say it with distance, with dignity. I watched her, the way she kept her fingers clenched around the strap of her bag like it was holding her together. She wasn't faking this part. I knew the difference. Then she looked up, eyes glassy but not quite breaking. Was it the pills? Was it the secret? I didn't want to burden you. I shook my head slowly. It wasn't the condition. She waited, hopeful. It was the concealment. Her mouth parted slightly. No defense came. I didn't leave because of what you took, I said, voice level. I left because of what you hid. A car passed behind us, some faint pop song leaking from the windows. She didn't seem to hear it. Her whole body was focused on parsing what I'd just said. You could have asked, she whispered. You could have told me, I answered. She closed her eyes for a second, like that stung more than she expected. That night you found the file, she said. I knew. I saw how you looked at me at dinner. I thought you were going to bring it up. I almost did. So why didn't you? Because I realized I'd never been invited into the part of your life that mattered most. I paused. And once you realize you're a guest in your own marriage, you don't ask for a seat at the table. You leave the house. Her chin trembled. She nodded once, like she understood but didn't know how to fix it. You were never supposed to feel like that, she said. But I did. Another silence opened between us, but it wasn't heavy this time. It was clean, final. She looked away first, wiped under her eye. I still think about you every day. I didn't say whether I believed her. I just turned to go. She didn't follow, didn't call after me, and I didn't look back. Some conversations aren't about closure. They're just the moment you stop needing any. It arrived on a Thursday, no return address, but I knew the handwriting. Neat, slanted. Still the same black ink pens she always insisted on using, even when a keyboard was faster. 4 pages. The envelope was thick with them, folded carefully, no smudges. I stared at it on the kitchen counter for half an hour before I opened it. No music, no phone, just the sound of the kettle cooling beside me, hissing into quiet. She started with my name. Full, formal, like she was writing to someone who used to exist. She said she was sorry, not just in the hollow way people say when they've been caught. This was the kind of sorry that takes effort, the kind that comes after a year of silence and too many drafts. She walked through it all. The night she broke down at her sister's, the moment she decided not to tell me, the first time she took the pill and didn't say what it was, the lies she told herself to justify the ones she told me. How every day she thought about undoing it, and how every day not doing it became easier. She didn't beg, she hoped that I was well, that I had found something steadier, that I might someday understand why she chose the path she did. There was a paragraph near the end, one that felt more raw than the others. I know I gave you a version of me edited for safety, but what I didn't understand until too late was that I wasn't protecting you. I was protecting the idea that you loved the perfect me, not the real one. I read that line twice, then I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer beneath the sink, not with keepsakes, not in a fire-safe box, just near the batteries and extra light bulbs, things you only reach for when you need to fix something. I didn't write back, not because I wanted to punish her, because I didn't need to. She had finally said what I waited so long to hear. But she'd said it a year too late, to a version of me that no longer needed the words. What I needed was already mine. Space, stillness, and the quiet knowledge that I'd escaped the gravity of a life built on edited truths. People think betrayal is always loud, yelling, slammed doors, tears in driveways, but sometimes it's quiet. It's a small white pill passed across the counter. It's a name left off a file. It's an I'm fine that covers a secret. And the cure, it's not confrontation. It's not screaming or ultimatums or one last fight to make the other person see. It's walking away without waiting to be understood. It's choosing peace over proof. It's the distance you take daily until one day it becomes who you are.